the 4-seeded Cincinnati Bengals, the AFC North Division Champions, going to Kansas City to take on the 2-seeded AFC West Champion Kansas City Chiefs. It's a rematch of their Week 17 matchup that happened in Cincinnati that the Bengals won 34-31. And, it was a matchup that the Chiefs seemed primed to win. They were overpowering the Bengals on offense. And, at one point, at halftime, they were leading 28-17. I mean, sure, 11-point lead. It's only halftime, but Patrick Mahomes and that offense were rolling. We're steamrolling that Chiefs defense. But in the second half, I mean, sure, people can blame the referees and penalties all they want in that game, but the Chiefs defense could not stop Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase from exploding all second half long, outscoring Kansas City 17-3. Yes, the Chiefs offense only scored 3 points alone in that second half. And the Bengals went on to win in a comeback on the backs of their kicker, Evan McPherson, and clinched their first AFC North title since 2015. That would set the tone for their playoff run. And here they are once again. So both teams, here they are in the title game. They've had some interesting roads. They had some interesting roads since their Week 17 matchup. For the Bengals, as the road team, clearly some things have gone a little more in their favor. For the Cincinnati Bengals at 10-7, they they clearly exceeded expectations as not just the division champions, but just making it to this point. They've had a very successful season with Joe Burrow, and Jamar Chase, the rookie 5th overall pick, has broke out in his very first season. And then the strong supporting cast with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and CJ Uzama, as well as running back Joe Mixon. This offense is very explosive. And, their defense is also pretty solid too. But, there's a little bit of concern when it comes to a couple of their injuries and their secondary. As the 4 seed, they began their playoff run at home against Derek Carr and the Las Vegas Raiders, who were fresh off their Week 18 victory against the LA Chargers in a win-or-go-home matchup. So for the Cincinnati Bengals, they were productive for most of the first half. On defense, Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson on the defensive line, they were getting to Derek Carr, and they were creating 3-and-outs on defense, and they were getting multiple chances for Joe Burrow in that offense to attack. And attack they did. They were creating a lot of chances to get points, and at one point they were up 17-6, I believe. And the highlight of that first half for Cincy was Joe Burrow's touchdown to Tyler Boyd right after the 2-minute warning of the first half. But it was kind of controversial because the whistle was blown by a referee, and that should have resulted in the play being dead, but they didn't. So anyway, aside from that controversial moment that happened, the aggression that Cincinnati showed in the first half was not there in the second half. And as a result, Las Vegas managed to storm back in the fourth quarter, albeit field goals. But still, it was still a relatively close game. And Derek Carr furiously got his offense, they got him going because, it was only a touchdown game for the Raiders. And had they scored, it would have forced overtime. But when they were in the red zone, Derek Carr threw an interception to linebacker Jermaine Pratt. He got a clutch moment in the final seconds, and the Bengals survived 26-19 and got their first playoff win since 1989, I believe, and ended the longest drought without a playoff victory. So I guess not having Marvin Lewis as your head coach did the trick to get your first playoff victory, as well as Andy Dalton not being your quarterback. So the next week after, they traveled to Tennessee to face the top seed Titans. The Titans were coming off their first round bye, getting everybody healthy, including their running back, Derrick Henry, on offense. And for the Titans, obviously, things not looking good, as we discussed on the previous episode, because the Bengals were creating plays of their own. On the the very beginning, because the safety, Jesse Bates, intercepted Ryan Tannehill on the very first play of the game. But all the Bengals could do was muster a field goal. So 3-0, okay, that's fine. But the problem was both teams were struggling. Both teams were struggling on offense for much of the game. And a big problem for Cincinnati, for not just this game, but for much of the season, was their ability to protect Joe Burrow up front on the offensive line. But it really showed here. It really showed in this game against the Titans, because the offensive line, they gave up 9 sacks. Yes, 9 sacks to a furious Titans pass rush. And that is not good. Joe Burrow was not able to get away from the pressure. He was not able to find his receivers. He couldn't, I don't know why Zach Taylor didn't go for the short passing game because of the terribleness of the offensive line, but it was what it was. Fortunately, for the Bengals, the Titans were also sucking on offense because of Ryan Tannehill. So towards the end of the game, it was tied 16-all, and the Titans had a chance to win this game. That was if they could get past midfield. And, well, they couldn't, because Eli Apple tipped one of Ryan Tannehill's passes, and Logan Wilson, one of the linebackers, intercepted it and gave the offense one more chance to let themselves win the game. And finally, the offensive line, didn't cave and allowed Joe Burrow to get a big pass into Jamar Chase to get into Evan McPherson's field goal range. And he won the game on a field goal, a very long field goal, to upset the AFC's top seed. Probably not, I guess you can't really call it an upset because they were very weak. But anyway, they managed to upset the AFC's top seed 19-16. So, for the Cincinnati Bengals, they're written as basement dwellers before the season even started by the media. But damn, here they are. AFC title game. Their first one in over 30 years. Remember Boomer Esiason and Chris Collinsworth playing for the Bengals. And if they win this game, they're going to the Super Bowl. They're just one game away from making their dreams come true. So all they need to do to get to the Super Bowl is get past the AFC's King of Kings. Bow down to the king. Da-na-na-na-na. Da-na-na-na-na. And that is the Kansas City Chiefs. And, for a Chiefs team that struggled for the early portion of the season, and, even I was thinking, I thought it was going to be a Chiefs season filled with this dreaded Super Bowl losers curse, where if you lose the Super Bowl, you're not going to do as well or pretty terrible the following season. But here the Chiefs are. They're back in the AFC title game. Their 4th straight one, hosting the game at home, thanks to the Titans sucking and, well, beating the Bills in the divisionals. And here they are. At 12-5, the Kansas City Chiefs are back in the AFC title game. But again, it wasn't always easy going for the Chiefs. They struggled in the early portion of the season, but they shook off that notion of the loser's curse for now and pretty much returned to form. Not much needs to be said about Patrick Mahomes in the offense, but a defense led by the safety Tyrann Mathieu and defensive tackle Chris Jones. The defense has done pretty well during the second half of the season, but they've kind of faltered during the last 2 games of the season. So they managed to get the 2 seed. I forgot to mention that matchup against Cincinnati where the Chiefs lost. They cost themselves the number 1 seed, but I guess they didn't really need it much because, well, it managed to help them in the end because Tennessee ended up losing anyway. But still, they began their bid to return to the Super Bowl, facing the 7th-seeded Pittsburgh Steelers. They started off slow on offense, and eventually, after TJ Watt strip sacked them on the Wildcat play, returned it for a touchdown, that was pretty much what the offense needed to wake itself up. Patrick Mahomes and company pretty much destroyed that Steelers defense that had been pretty solid for much of the year, and it shat the bed in this game. And then obviously, Big Ben Roethlisberger was washed as all hell in this game. He stood no chance against the Chiefs, as the Chiefs sent Big Ben into retirement 42-21 in a total blowout. So that Steelers matchup only served as an appetizer, that appetizer to the main course of what was to come for Kansas City at home. A matchup with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills in the divisional playoffs. This is a highly anticipated rematch from last year's AFC Championship game and in Week 5. Both teams looking for revenge on one another. For the Chiefs, it was that Week 5 matchup where the Bills trounced them at home. For the Bills, they want to eliminate the team that beat them in the AFC title game a year ago. So initially, this highly anticipated rematch, looked towards being a kind of pseudo blowout because this Chiefs team was imposing their will against a Bills defense that, well, for a top-ranked team, was kind of like getting their will imposed on by Kansas City. Sure, they didn't have their top corner, Tre'Davious White. They lost him in the Thanksgiving game, but they were giving up a lot of plays to the Kansas City offense. Kansas City was leading this game 23-14 midway in the third. But then Josh Allen was like, "Nuh-uh, I am not going away that easily." He was lights out for the rest of the game. Him and reserve receiver Gabriel Davis had the game of their life. As the Bills went on to try to win this game as much as possible, but I guess Patrick Mahomes saw that as a cute gesture because once the Bills took the lead very late in the game, I think it was like 26-23, 29-26. Mahomes just needed 1 minute in the fourth quarter to throw a ball to Tyreek Hill and let him streak past the Bills defense, retake that lead. But then he also had to see Josh Allen burn as much time as possible again, throw another strike to Gabriel Davis to give the Bills the lead back. And then here we are, 13 seconds left for the Kansas City Chiefs to make something happen. But that was the problem for the Bills. 13 long seconds for the Buffalo Bills to play defense. And here was another problem. They elected against squib kicking this ball. And if they squib kicked the ball, if Sean McDermott called a squib kick, then the Chiefs would have had only like 1 or 2 plays to get that ball into field goal territory, let alone, I don't think they would have even got a field goal in. They would have had to Hail Mary that shit into the end zone. So the Chiefs instead get to run 2 big plays to get into Harrison Butker's field goal range to force overtime. And they did force overtime, where on a coin toss, Mahomes gets the ball first, and Josh Allen never touches it. So Mahomes, once again, burnt the Bills defense to a crisp, capped off by Travis Kelce, getting a leaping touchdown grab to seal a thrilling overtime victory, 42-36. So pretty much it was kind of like a reverse of fortune from the 2018 AFC title game against New England, except the Chiefs are on the positive end of it, I guess. So for Kansas City, the defense still remains a cause for concern, especially if they're not able to have Tyrann Mathieu, their safety, playing in this game with a head injury. But assuming he does play, even then, the Chiefs defense still was giving up a lot of yardage. But let's be honest, there's not really much denying that if Josh Allen and the Bills can stop them, is it really like plausible to bet against Kansas City from going to their second Super Bowl in 3 years, like actually the third straight Super Bowl, and potentially winning their second Super Bowl in 3 years? Really? Like, is it like, does it feel too predictable at this point? Does it? Sure, any given Sunday, but doesn't it just feel a little too predictable? I don't know. I just don't know. So some of the biggest storylines, I guess, going into this game is, this Bengals offense going up against this Chiefs defense in probably the biggest game of the playoffs. So for Joe Burrow, it's Joe Burrow. and Jamar Chase, actually this entire offense against a Chiefs defense that actually was giving up a ton of big plays to not just Josh Allen, the Bills in the divisional round, but back in Week 17 when these two teams faced each other. So I know a lot of things have happened since then, but this Chiefs defense still gives up a lot of plays. And, in spite of the offensive line issues for Cincinnati, Joe Burrow has proven that he can sling the ball to his guys. Speaking of Joe Burrow, he's still pretty inexperienced, but I guess with this playoff run that he's having, he's gaining some. But he's going up against a more seasoned Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes has been in the playoffs for 4 consecutive years now. He's been to like 4 AFC title games. He's won a Super Bowl. He's lost in a Super Bowl. He's felt the lows of that last year's Super Bowl. So Mahomes knows what it's like to be in this situation, unlike with Joe Burrow. Sure, Burrow was in the national championship game in college, but that was college. This is the NFL. Much different situation. So it's a battle. For me, it's a battle of experience for these two quarterbacks. So some keys to victory for these teams. For the Bengals, I think it's pretty clear what they need to do. The number one key to victory is to protect Joe Burrow. The offensive line has to protect Joe Burrow at all costs. You can't have a repeat performance of the Tennessee Titans game. The Kansas City Chiefs pass rush, not too strong as the Titans, but if Chris Jones and Frank Clark demolish that Cincinnati front, that offensive line, then Joe Burrow is going to have a very long day. If that offensive line continues to fail, then Zach Taylor has to design plays for Joe Burrow to get that ball out, do some short throws, and let the receivers try to make some big plays happen. Get the mid range, and then once the offensive line finally, if they try to settle in, then you can get the mid range and deep shots going in. And then the defensive line has to contain Patrick Mahomes in the pocket. He can't let him get elusive, scramble out of the pocket, make all these crazy ass throws to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. It just can't happen. For the Kansas City Chiefs, just let Mahomes and the big three do their thing. You're playing against a decent Bengals secondary, but you're playing them again. You're playing against a Bengals secondary that doesn't really have a inch of guarding Travis Kelce, like they did in Week 17. But this is the championship game, and then you have to shadow man-to-man Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And lastly, feast on this offensive line. This Bengals offensive line is pretty horrid. Like I said before, the Bengals' lack of addressing the offensive line in the last offseason, it's coming back to haunt them. It really is coming back to haunt them. And, for both of these offenses, they're very strong. They have the ability to score on one another, as evidenced in their Week 17 game. This could be another shootout. It could be a blowout. But the biggest key, though, will be Cincinnati's offensive line and whether or not they can actually protect Joe Burrow this time around, unlike last week in the divisionals. Now, if they can hold up against the likes of Frank Clark and Chris Jones and that Kansas City pass rush, then Burrow can create some chances for his receivers, get some plays in for them. But if not, it's going to be a very long day. Kansas City will be able to create some 3-and-outs on that Bengals offense, and that could lead to more opportunities for Mahomes to smash them. So Kansas City knows what it has to do to beat Cincinnati. They got to continually score with Mahomes every chance he gets. But the defense should also do their part in attacking that offensive line. That being said, I'm going with Kansas City because not only do they have the tools to go after Cincinnati's biggest weakness, but they also have the experience for Mahomes to outduel Joe Burrow in this kind of game. So I'm going with the Kansas City Chiefs in this big game.